The fight over the minimum wage. Businesses say we can't afford it. Advocates say we can't afford not to. Dawn introduces us to a working mom who pays for all her kids' clothes with eBay. And my commentary this week is on our country slowly drifting to another war. What is the minimum wage? Well, that all depends on where you are right now. It's as low as $7.25 in Pennsylvania, but it could go as high as $11.50 in New York. Now that is a big difference, and that begs the question, who should have jurisdiction on the issue? We begin our coverage with Ellen Kolodziej in Philadelphia, where the minimum wage could go as high as $12. Ellen.
Governor Tom Wolf wants to raise the minimum wage here in Pennsylvania by almost $3 from $7.25 to $10.10. But the head of the State Chamber of Business and Industry says that's a bad idea. Gene Barr gave us a statement that says unemployment is at a 7-year low and job creation is on the rise. So he says raising the minimum wage would hurt small business. But others say the status quo isn't working for working families.
Almost every day I talk to low-wage workers who have had the experience of working at $7.25, $7.50, $7.75 for periods of years. And they tend to be people with small children, and they're trying to raise a family, and they're trying to do the right thing, which is to go to work every day and earn a paycheck and come home and take care of their kids.
Katie Sipp is the director of Pennsylvania Working Families and also a member of Raise the Wage PA. She'd like to see workers in big cities such as Philadelphia make even more than $10 an hour, but she's hopeful everyone in the state will get a raise soon.
I think that some form of minimum wage increase will pass in Harrisburg. I think that everyone recognizes that, we waited through a very long recession to have this conversation again, and now the economy's getting better and we need to raise wages for everyone, not just the folks at the top of the economic scale.
Here's a breakdown of the minimum wage in other nearby states. Delaware still has the federal minimum of $7.25, but that will go up to $8.25 in June. New Jersey went from $7.25 to $8.38 last June, and in January, New York went from $7.25 to $8.75. But by the end of this year, the Empire State will have a minimum wage of $9 an hour. So if the governor's plan passes, Pennsylvania will have one of the highest minimum wages in the area. Now, President Obama also wants to raise the federal minimum wage to $10.10 as well. But many lawmakers in Washington say that could hurt the economy. Reporting for Another Thing, I'm Ellen Kolodziej.
All right, thank you, Ellen. And now to talk more about the debate over the rise in the minimum wage is Michael Egenton, who is the Senior Vice President of Government Relations at the New Jersey State Chamber of Commerce. And we welcome back to the show Professor Steven Pressman, a professor of economics here at Monmouth University. Are either of you, and I'll start with you, are either of you philosophically against raising the minimum wage?
No, Larry, our organization, when we discussed the minimum wage issue in Trenton, told our policymakers, let's negotiate. We're not adamantly opposed to raising the minimum wage. We've always had the legislature set that mechanism up. What the legislature decided to do, and it passed, it went to a ballot question to the citizens of New Jersey, it is now tied to the Constitution and tied to the Consumer Price Index.
All right, you're getting ahead of me a little bit. You've heard all the arguments against raising the minimum wage, that it's going to hinder business, that businesses won't hire. Is there any evidence that that is true?
There's very little evidence that that's true. Certainly it's going to have some effect, but the effect is generally pretty small. The best study that was done, the gold standard of studies in economics, was actually done in the early 1990s when New Jersey increased the minimum wage and Pennsylvania didn't. And two Princeton economists looked at two contiguous counties, New Jersey and Pennsylvania, and they examined what happened to the growth of jobs in both of those two counties in fast food outlets, which typically pay at minimum wage, and they found no difference. And that study has been done again and again in other areas where minimum wage has increased, and the studies have found again and again and again that those increases in the minimum wage really had no impact on hiring by fast food places.
And Michael, does the Chamber of Commerce still believe it would hinder growth and hinder business?
Oh, absolutely, Larry. I actually do want to counter. What's interesting is we need to go back and do empirical data and a study on now that it's tied to the Consumer Price Index. Business owners are typically looking for certainty and predictability. Now that it's tied to the CPI, that's taken out of the mix. We've often heard our business owners say to us, it's not the one issue, it's not just minimum wage in and of itself, it's all death by 1,000 cuts. It's the Affordable Care Act and what health insurance is going to cost them. It's regulations coming from Washington and Trenton. So it's compounded that the business owner is consistently challenged. And when they're challenged and they have to make sure that their ledger is balanced at the end of the day, they're going to have to make the difficult choices. They may not hire the other individual. They may have to.
But he's saying the data has shown that hasn't happened.
But now the story is different now. Now that it's tied to the Consumer Price Index and there's no certainty.
In New Jersey. Let's make sure we say that, not everywhere.
Correct.
Yeah.
That now that predictability and certainty is taken out of the mix. And we often hear from our business owners that they're already challenged with some of these other critical issues. And let's also remember that minimum wage, you take our shore destinations, the tourist destinations, a lot of the seasonal help that start at minimum wage, a lot of foreign exchange students come. Minimum wage was never really set to be the be-all, end-all. What we always advocate in the state chamber is workforce development, training, education, everything to get that better job and to move up in the chain of command.
Do you want to respond to any of that, especially the CPI?
Well, I think the predictability is there. I think it's fairly predictable what the CPI is going to be, and certainly when the minimum wage increases in January, by a couple of months before that, everybody will have a good idea what the increase is going to be.
13 cents, they're saying.
But inflation has been relatively low at 1-2% for several years. It's unlikely that the minimum wage is going to that the CPI and the minimum wage is going to rise really high one year and then much higher the other year. I think we can be fairly confident that the minimum wage will be fairly stable, and that'll give predictability to what the increase is going to be from year to year.
I want to go through the minimum wages in the area very quickly. In Pennsylvania, it's $7.25, which is the federal minimum wage. Governor Tom Wolf is talking about bringing it up to $10. In Philadelphia, it's $10.88. There's an executive order to bring it up to $12. So Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. New Jersey, it's $8.25. It's going to go up to $8.38 because of the cost of living index. In New York, it's $8.75. There's a proposal to make it $10.50 across the state and $11.50 in New York City, and the legislature wants to bring it up to $15. In Delaware, it's $7.75. In June, it's going to go up to $8.25. What I'm getting at is in a small area, the minimum wage is all over the place. Yep. Shouldn't somebody, one entity, have jurisdiction over this? Can you have minimum wages everywhere being different and politicians and government entities having all this say in it? The government was supposed to set up. Was supposed to be set up, so no, this didn't happen, right?
And Larry, there's a legislative proposal that was just introduced that would allow all 565 municipalities in New Jersey to set their minimum wage. That would cause wage chaos. We've always said, keep a level playing field, let the state and the federal government dictate what public policy should be. Now we're starting to push down to the local jurisdiction. Even that's too much. Even to say
the state and the federal. Didn't we have a constitution that was supposed to separate that, Professor?
The problem is that the federal government has not been doing its job. It's the federal government that should have been raising the minimum wage. And when the federal government was not raising the minimum wage, states stepped into the void. And so one state said, okay, we've got to raise our minimum wage. And state after state after state has been raising the minimum wage, whereas other states have not increased the minimum wage at all.
That's another problem. As you look at the minimum wage across the country, in Georgia it's ridiculously low, and then they're talking about going up to $15 in New York. How do you compete?
Right. And we're in the tri-state area, so obviously, salaries is a big economic driver for employers and employees. That's why we're one of the most densely populated states in the nation here in New Jersey. But again, this whole convoluted, allowing municipal jurisdictions and not having a level playing field doesn't help the issue at all, and makes it very, very confusing for business owners. I would hate to be a human resource individual trying to keep track. Imagine if you have a business operation and you're in several different municipalities. how are you even supposed to keep track of your employees?
Mike Egenton,
thank you, Larry.
So much for coming in. Professor, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Michael
Thank you for
Egenton
having
is
me.
Senior Vice President, Government Relations for the New Jersey State Chamber of Commerce, and Professor Steven Pressman, Professor of Economics here at Monmouth University. Stick around. Coming up next on Another Thing, we continue our discussion on race in America and trying to move forward from Ferguson.